Good afternoon, everyone out there. My name is Dana Mitchell. I am the coordinator of the Dover Youth Program, and it is more than my pleasure to welcome you all to our first webinar for this upcoming school year. We also have another one that will be 2 weeks from today. Today's webinar is Implementing Youth Empowerment. It's designed to be a more generalized overview of the concept of youth empowerment and the different models for involving youth in your coalition or in your community in drug prevention. And I'm glad to have you here today. My contact information is the official contact information for Dover Youth to Youth. So if you see anything today that you're interested in, you want more of, you have a question of, or some way that we can help you or your coalition, I'm the contact person, and there's the information up there. Information is also on your handout. Speaking of the handout, that was emailed to you a couple of times if you registered for this webinar, and you don't need to have it in front of you for the purposes of the webinar, although we will refer to it. Handout has a variety of resources that you're welcome to use, and other information and contacts and links. It has a couple of radio PSA scripts that you're welcome to have your students record, like some of the ones we're going to play for you. Some of you are toolkit owners, and if you are a toolkit owner, then that's great. You don't have to have the toolkit in front of you, and if you're not a toolkit owner, if you want more information, you can get a hold of us afterwards. But again, you don't need to have your toolkit for the purposes of this webinar today. We have a chat feature. Feel free at any point during the presentation to send in a comment, send in a question, and we'll plug it in the appropriate spot during the course of the webinar, or we'll answer also questions at the end of the webinar as well. So feel free to use the chat feature. And again, any resources that you see as we go through this presentation, we're glad to do whatever we can to help you and share with you as far as that goes. So objectives for today: have a clear understanding of what we mean when we say youth empowerment, and have that clear in terms of that approach to involving youth in your community. Identify the knowledge and skills that allow your kids to have the capacity to create environmental change. Provide you some examples of different projects and things that your students can do, as well as share some resources with you and provide you with basic background principles and ideas that you can use in your community. So that's an overview of where we're going. In the past, we've tried to use videos during the webinars, and the GoToWebinar software that we used just does not support videos very well, so we're not going to try to do that. We have some radio, audio media that we're going to use for you to help illustrate some things. And so my last duty here is to introduce the other presenters who are going to take over right now. Students from Dover Youth to Youth, our program, and they're going to start off explaining how their particular program is set up, and then go into some of the examples of projects and activities they do before we move on from there. So, gang, take it away.
Hello everyone, my name is Hannah. I'm Violet. And I'm Belle. And we are all members of Dover Youth to Youth, and Dover Youth to Youth is an after-school drug and alcohol prevention program. And in our group, we have about 70 members.
And we are all split up into 4 different teams based off of our age. So, for example, I'm in high school, so I'm on the Monday night team.
And so each group meets once a week for about 2 hours. And the group members can also come in for additional time throughout the week to either work on presentations or other projects.
And while we do like to have a whole bunch of fun, we are mostly about taking action. So we focus on these 4 main areas when we take action. So that's media, policy change, community awareness, and education.
So the first area we take action in is educating others. So if a student is interested and wants to participate in teaching, we teach them how to follow a lesson plan and how to present effectively to many different types of audiences. A good example of an audience we'll present to is a classroom presentation. And a good example of one of our classroom presentations is our presentation, Samantha Skunk. Now, this is a presentation usually catered to younger audiences, so we'll do it to preschoolers, kindergartners, first graders, anything like that. And it's a very interactive presentation that's really fun and gets the kids involved in medicine safety. Another way we educate others is through large assemblies. So one of the more common presentations that we do in these large assemblies is our 8 Things presentation. And during our 8 Things presentation, we go over the top 8 consequences that the alcohol industry isn't going to warn you about. During this presentation, we contrast the way the alcohol industry advertises using advertisements like these with the actual consequences of using the product. These consequences include addiction, alcohol poisoning, falls and accidents, and vulnerability to sexual assault. During this portion of the presentation, we talk about a girl named Lindsay Kajauskas, who, as a freshman in high school, went to an underage drinking party and then was taken advantage of by 2 boys. Separate from the presentation, we worked very closely with Lindsay during this time, and we ended up making a radio PSA with her that we're going to play for you now that explains a little bit more about Lindsay's story.
I snuck out of my house to go to a party with older kids. Once I was there, I was offered a drink. I felt like I had to drink to fit in.
Use of alcohol, particularly by teens, raises the risk of blackouts, passing out, or losing control of your situation.
After 2 drinks, I didn't feel so good. I went to lie down and passed out.
Alcohol can also cause people to be violent.
The next thing I knew, a guy from the party was raping me while another watched.
Alcohol can make you unable to protect yourself, and you could become a victim.
My name is Lindsay Kajauskas. When I was 14 years old, I lost control of my situation because of alcohol. I'm telling you my story because I don't want this to happen to you.
If this has happened to you or someone you know, help is available. If you have questions or want to talk, you can call Sexual Assault Support Services 24 hours a day, toll-free and confidential at 1-888-747-7070. That's 1-888-747-7070.
Created and presented by Dover Youth.
I snuck out of my...
So we also do a lot of conferences and regional training. So this is when other groups in the country will actually reach out and ask us to travel out to their location to do some kind of training session for a day or a couple days. So we've actually been to 30 states and Bermuda. So for example, I've actually recently just went to New York and Nebraska.
So those were some ways that we educate our community, but we also work with legislation and policy change.
So we have tried to make things better in our community by changing or passing a law or city ordinance.
So in Dover, we have proposed and passed 7 city ordinances. And for those of you who don't know, an ordinance is a law that applies specifically to the city or town it is passed in. Our most recent city ordinance we passed was our e-cigarette ordinance. And what this ordinance does is it bans e-cigarette usage where cigarette usage is already prohibited. And so what our group did was we actually drafted the legislation ourselves. We wrote the bill, and we also wrote our own testimony, which we proposed to the city council. And then the bill actually passed 9-0, so it passed unanimously.
And we also get involved in state legislation. So sometimes we go to Concord about a law that someone else has proposed. And so, for example, last year, we actually went to the State House to testify against legalizing marijuana use.
We also propose our own state laws. Oh, so a good example of this is our party host law. Now, what this law does is it makes it illegal to host a party where underage drinking is taking place. Now, this law took about 2 years for us to pass, and it eventually passed in 2004.
So we've also proposed and passed a law that states that rolling papers are illegal for minors to possess or purchase.
So not only do we take action in the legislation part of taking action, but we also take action in communities. So we do a lot of community awareness projects.
One of our more common simple community awareness projects that we conduct a couple of times every year is our Sticker Shock project. Now, a lot of you guys listening today may have conducted the Sticker Shock campaign yourselves, so just listen closely to how we conduct this campaign. So we go out to different stores with their permission from their managers, and we put stickers on different cases of alcohol. And you can see a picture of our sticker up on the PowerPoint. And our goal of this project is for parents to take home more information on underage drinking when they buy the alcohol. So another community awareness project we do is called our Hilltop Fun Center project. So for those of you who don't know, Hilltop Fun Center is an arcade place, kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese, and it's got a lot of arcade games and prizes to win. But there's also laser tag, mini golf, and of course, go-karts. So a member of Dover Youth was actually using the go-kart track and was on the kids' go-kart track when he noticed that one of the cars on the go-kart track actually was advertising Budweiser. So on the front, you can see it says Bud King of Beers, and on the side, it says Budweiser. Now, the member of Dover Youth came back to us and explained the situation, and we kind of thought that it was really sending a bad message to kids with advertising alcohol on the kids' track, and it also kind of promoted drinking and driving. So we drafted a letter to Hilltop Fun Center explaining why we thought the car should be removed from the track, and we hand-delivered it, and we later got a call that the go-kart track was removed. So another annual project that we do is our Spencer's Gifts project. And just for anybody that might not know, Spencer's Gifts is a store that is very famous for selling merchandise that promotes drug use. So our Spencer's Gift is located in our mall. And what we noticed a few years back was that Spencer's seemed to have no problem selling these things to kids. So we decided to test Spencer's out a bit, and we sent in some kids to see what they could buy. And they were actually able to purchase a bunch of different things. So you can see that they got some clothing, they were able to purchase jewelry, some toys, and candy. And there was actually, they not only sold things that glorify drug use, they also sold things that help kids to hide it. So up here you can see, those are actually, it's a box of fake tampons, so kids can take their marijuana or whatever drug they want, and they put it inside of the tampon because no one's going to question that. And so you can also see there's like a poster that someone was able to purchase. And then we just kept sending in younger and younger kids until we sent in a third grader. And a third grader was able to purchase this t-shirt, and it says, "What I really learned in school." And it's just a joint that's being smoked, so it's getting smaller and smaller. So as a group, we obviously decided that this was a problem. Spencer should not be allowed to sell this type of merchandise to children. So we wrote up a letter to Spencer's telling them how we felt and why we thought this was a problem, and they completely ignored us. So we held a press conference, and that got us some pretty good coverage. So then we decided to take it one step further, and we actually held a protest right outside of Spencer's in our mall. And within minutes of starting our protest, we were kicked out of the mall by mall security. Now, we were kicked out for protesting against an illegal substance. So we didn't think that Spencer should be getting away with this. So then we made this Spencer's project a part of our annual summer camp. So every single year, even now, a group of kids will go into the mall and they will try and purchase any type of drug paraphernalia or glorifying merchandise that they can find. And within the past couple of years, Spencer's has actually refused to sell to minors. So that's definitely a bonus, but we still go back every single year just to make sure that they're still doing that. So along with all of these other projects we do, we also work a lot in media. So when you join Youth to Youth, you start learning media strategies and how to present effectively to a large audience using these media strategies. So one of those media strategies is used when we make radio PSAs. And a radio PSA is just a radio public service announcement. So back in Dover, we have a really good relationship with a lot of the radio stations in our area,
And we actually go to the radio stations, get these PSAs recorded, and actually put on the radio. And now we're going to play an example of a radio PSA we made called Jilted.
Hi, weird meeting you here.
Oh, it's you.
I've been thinking about you.
Oh, no, please don't go there.
Why are you being like this? What we had was so good.
No, it wasn't. It was awful. It just took me a long time to realize it.
You always came back before.
This time, I got help. We're done.
Are you trying to end a bad relationship with tobacco too? Call 1-800-TRY-TO-STOP or go to smokefree.gov.
Created and presented by Dover Youth Youth.
So along with our radio PSAs, we also make a lot of video PSAs. So unfortunately, we cannot play a video PSA for you today, but you can check out all of our video PSAs on our YouTube channel, which is Dover Y, the number 2 Y.
So those were just a few of our simpler, kind of easier projects. But now we want to tell you guys a little bit about complex campaigns.
So a campaign is basically a long project, usually a year or longer, with a single message. And this message is usually perpetuated throughout the year with different kinds of activities, whether it's through legislation or policy change or community awareness projects. So one example of one of our campaigns is the Tell the Truth campaign. Now, this campaign was revolving around a counter-advertising message we had towards the alcohol industry. And we wanted them to tell the truth in their advertising about the consequences of alcohol. So as you can see up on the PowerPoint, we usually kick it off with a very large demonstration downtown during our week-long summer program. So you can see a lot of kids holding large visuals and posters. Here we made a giant TV with all the things you've never heard in a beer commercial that are all consequences of alcohol. We also had kids passing out palm cards downtown to send our message out to the public. It says, "Hey, big tobacco, big alcohol, we want the truth." And we also held a large press conference downtown to spread our message to the media. Now, throughout the year, we did a lot of presentations, like 8 things to try and spread our message of counter-advertising. And we also recorded a radio PSA called Addicted to FUD that we will play for you now.
Okay, that about wraps up this meeting on the new ad campaign for Fun and Wiser Beer. This is a great beer commercial. Any final thoughts? Lucy?
Boss, our ads show young, beautiful people playing sports, frolicking on the beach, making it with the ladies.
Yeah, but what's your point?
I was thinking, perhaps we should put some type of warning in the ad, like something about the 14 million people addicted to alcohol.
Oh, yeah, that might work.
What? Are you out of your mind? People might drink less.
But boss, this is a problem we can't ignore. No one intends to become addicted to alcohol. We should warn them that most people don't realize they have a problem until it's too late.
Listen, have you ever seen a beer commercial that used the word addiction? Hello, we're in the alcohol business, not the truth business.
Falls, suicide, crime, violence, depression, family problems, pregnancy, STDs, fetal alcohol syndrome, date rape, alcohol poisoning, and addiction.
These are some of the things the alcohol industry won't warn you about, so we thought we would.
Created and presented by Dover Youth Youth.
Oh.
So that was some of what we do in Youth. But our purpose here today is to show you how to get there. And now we want to show you what you would do when you have all of these kids and how to go out into your community and take these steps.
So we do this by following a youth empowerment model. But before we go over that model, we want to talk about some common terms that you'll be hearing about this next portion of the presentation so that we're all on the same page. So these 3 terms are youth involvement, youth engagement, and youth empowerment. So youth involvement is when the student is committed to the task. So this could be if a student is stuffing envelopes for your coalition with facts about underage drinking that you're going to send to parents, but they're only committed to the task and they don't know what they're stuffing the envelope with, then it's youth involvement. Youth engagement is one step further. So if a student is conducting the sticker shock project, and if they know what's on the sticker and how to explain it, they're then committed to the mission. So they're excited and passionate about what they're doing, and they're not only carrying out the task, but they also are knowledgeable about what's going on. Then there's youth empowerment, which takes it one step further. So youth empowerment is when you give students the capacity to make change in their environment. So here at Youth to Youth, we follow our youth empowerment model, which goes knowledge, skills, and action, which you can see on the next slide. So we start out with all obtaining a level of expertise on the project that we're about to handle. So we try to gain enough knowledge so that we're knowledgeable enough to be competent with the other adults in our community. And then once we obtain our knowledge, we then work on the skills that we're going to need for that specific project. So if we were recording a radio PSA, we'd be working on media skills and presentation skills. Once we have all of our knowledge and all of our skills, we're then ready to take action in our community.
Okay, this is Dana Mitchell again, and I'm going to jump in here and provide some further information on that, help in the understanding of the difference of that. Good way to look at youth empowerment and the difference between youth empowerment and youth engagement or involvement is consider the difference between intramural pickup basketball after school and the varsity basketball team. So if you have an intramural basketball program, it's great exercise, keeps the kids busy, they'll learn a little bit about the sport, they'll have a lot of fun, very positive type of thing. But it's not your varsity basketball team. If you think about what would be the difference between that after-school pickup basketball, which is very positive, what's the difference between that and your varsity sport, say a varsity basketball team? And the difference would be the time commitment, the level of knowledge that's expected of the rules, of the plays, of the opponent, of the level of skills that are expected, and the effort that's put into developing those skills, the passing skills, shooting skills, and so forth. A student might very well put in 6 or 8 hours of practice for 10 minutes of playing time in the game. So that's a good analogy. Youth empowerment, if you're doing a youth empowerment program, that would be equivalent to taking a varsity kind of approach or view of what you're trying to accomplish. You would make sure that they were highly knowledgeable and highly knowledgeable in whatever topic you're going to take on, have a level of expertise, and you would work on those skills on a regular basis. You would develop and drill the students on those skills, and the students here work literally 4 hours, for hours and hours, for each 30-minute or 60-minute presentation they might do, including the students here that worked on this webinar. Hours of time spent developing those skills before they were even assigned to this over the past years. They all joined in 6th grade. And then hours on the specific presentation assignment they might do, using that as an example. So that's our model and approach. If you have a program in your community where the drug prevention youth group is more of a club, where there's not quite the same emphasis on the development of knowledge, development of skills, and they do some projects in the schools and get some information out there, that's a great thing. If that is what you're doing is the equivalent of the intramural basketball, it's extremely positive. So I'm going to be very clear. we're not saying there's anything wrong with a drug prevention club, as there is in many high schools. It can be a very positive thing, a very positive influence on the school climate. But what we're talking about is youth empowerment, where the level of knowledge and skills is developed in a more calculated and deliberate way to bring them up to more of a peak capacity. And it's that capacity that allows them to change their environment. So when the students go to the Hilltop Fun Center and get them to change the go-kart to not have Budweiser all over it, that results in a change in the environment. Or if there's a certain park where they can't use cigarettes or e-cigarettes because they got the city council to pass a city ordinance, that changes the environment. So that's a higher, more sophisticated level of change that you're asking the students to be involved in. And if your students are going to get in front of your city council, then you're going to want them to have a very high level of very professional and highly developed capacity to testify before the city council, to write up their testimony, and to give that in a professional way, and have a high level of understanding of the process for changing an ordinance and so forth. So, and that's approach. So that's the kind of approach we're talking about. A lot of our resources are geared towards either helping other communities develop a strategy for implementing a youth empowerment program, or helping a community that has a less intense program that wants to ramp it up and do more environmental kinds of changes and bring up the capacity of the students to do some of those things. They'll explain the whole knowledge and skills thing, so we're going to skip over that and into the skills and examples of the kinds of skills. Typically, advocacy skills would be presentation skills and media production, theatrical skills, leadership skills. All of those types of things are the types of things that you would work to develop those skills. We have a lot of tools here that we're very willing to share. That, for example, on presentation skills, we have a whole lesson plan and PowerPoint system that we use to train our students starting in 6th grade in presentation skills. That's actually exactly the topic that we're going to be talking about on October 17th at our next webinar. So if that has a particular interest for you, you might want to tune into that webinar, where we're going to get into more specific topics, in this case, presentation skills. Next frame. Once you have a high level of knowledge, a high level of skills for the action you want to take, the typical types of action that is undertaken by a youth empowerment group would fall into the 4 categories that the students did a really good job of explaining previously and giving you some examples. Youth empowerment, from our perspective, is a twofer. When I say twofer, I mean it gives you impacts in 2 areas. It has the impact that your radio PSAs, your programs, the policies that you change, the practices that you change in the businesses, all those changes and the effects they have on the community level effects, but it also has a great deal of impact on the youth advocates themselves, as they develop really hardcore skills and academic skills and public speaking, media development, writing skills, and working with the press and those types of things that are invaluable, that they carry forward with them long after they have left your program. So we really value this type of approach for that twofer kind of a reason. Someone will want to know about our model, and has it been evaluated? In 2010, we were a SAMHSA Service to Science site. We received technical assistance from SAMHSA. They sent experts to our facility to help us design our research. And then the following year, we were selected to receive a capacity building grant to actually undertake the evaluation process. In 2013, we're placed on New Hampshire's list of evidence-based programs. And so within the state of New Hampshire, at least, we're sort of automatically, all our tools and materials. If someone uses those, it's automatically considered an evidence-based approach. In many states who have wanted to access our materials, their state recognized New Hampshire's status, New Hampshire's evidence-based list, and that was sufficient for themselves. So if you are interested in using any of our materials, you'd want to check on that if you're required to use materials that are considered to be evidence-based. Next frame. In the process of going through the evaluation, we developed the toolkit. We took all of our 25 years worth of radio PSAs, lesson plans, PowerPoints, samples of press releases, forms, flyers, and pulled it all together in a systematic way into a binder called the toolkit, which some of you already own and are using. The toolkit is not a curriculum. You reach for the particular tool you need. If you need to do presentation skills, you go to Module 2B and you use that particular item. I'm not going to go into depth in that. If someone has some interest in that, you can contact me. We do have to charge for that. It's a large document, comes with a flash drive that has 51 gig of resources, a folder for each module that supports the module that's described in the toolkit. So some people are having a lot of good luck with that when they're trying to do the type of approach that we do. So you can check into that if that has any interest. But we're going to move on from there. I don't want to make a sales pitch out of this. Next frame. So if you're going to get started in youth empowerment, there's a few things to consider. Whether you're taking a smaller group and trying to expand its role and its capacity, or if you're just starting from scratch, as many people are. One of the first consideration is, who is the supervising entity? And in Dover Youth to Youth, it's the City of Dover, and the budget falls under the fiscal supervision of the Dover Police Department. That's an unusual supervising entity, but it works for us. It could be a hospital, a Boys and Girls Club, or YMCA, or anything of those types. Somebody has to be the overseeing entity, and in many cases it's the school department. Support of the power structure. If you want to get started this, it's a good idea to get a good handle on what you're trying to do. If you say, I want to start a youth empowerment group, to have the people who you need to help you out understand what that means when you say, we want to have a youth empowerment group. Having them understand that they might be trying to pass an ordinance, creating media that's going to play in the local stations, giving presentations in the schools, trying to change people's attitudes, move norms, and change practices and policies. It's a little more aggressive style of program, and I mean that aggressive in a positive way, a more active, active form of advocacy. So it's important for people to understand what you're trying to build and where you're trying to go with it. And who is the power structure? It could be the superintendent of schools or the local principals of the schools that you're going to need to work with. It could be the police chief. It could be the town council, city council. The people that can open doors for you and make things happen. That's your power structure. And you need some of those people, and hopefully a lot of those people, on board if you want to do that. Another issue you have to deal with on the front end is the age range of the students who will be your advocates. We like to recruit 5th graders to join in 6th grade, and that works for us. We always recommend starting as young as you can. Middle school is ideal. So by the time our students arrive at 9th grade, they have had 3 years of training and 3 years of experience, and they arrive on the high school team within our program, and they're ready to rock and roll. They have a lot of experience and are very competent. Some places will start in high school, and that poses some challenges, but we see people accomplish that all the time. They start in 9th grade and they work out from there. And so either way it can be done. If you have a choice, starting young and developing them through middle school has a lot of positives to it. Defining the scope. Are you are you working on an anti-tobacco grant? And sometimes your funding source will drive what types of substances you target and what types of things you might do. It doesn't really matter what things you take on. It's a matter of everyone sort of agreeing this is the scope of the group and having that defined in advance. It could go anywhere. In our case, we take on, we do a lot of tobacco and underage drinking. We have a STOP Act grant, if you're familiar with that, and so that obviously drives us into the underage drinking realm a good bit because we have to meet the requirements of the grant that's helping to fund things. On the screen, you can see this is a checklist that we created for our toolkit. There's one for each module, one of each of the several dozen modules of the toolkit. This particular one is called the Administrative Toolkit. It's found in the very first module, and it's also in your handout. This is a great way to sort of check yourself and see how you're doing. It is the set of recommendations that we have based on our experience of helping many, many programs around the country. And it just is a way you can sort of yes and no, we have these things. These are the practices that are associated with success. The youth empowerment programs and the youth programs that do these things on this checklist, when they do these things, that is associated with a more successful program, greater chances of success. So, for example, it says you have 2 advisors. We always recommend having more than one advisor, because if the advisor gets pregnant, gets sick, or goes to another job, as happens with people, then you don't want the whole program to come to a screeching halt. So it talks about communication systems. It covers a variety of administrative issues that when these administrative practices are in place, it's associated with a greater chance of having a successful result. The advisor is critical, and we see this all the time. Having an advisor who is, quote unquote, the right person is definitely probably the major key to success, as well as having 2 of them, having the right people that can relate to the kids, people that are motivated, people that are invested in the mission that you're trying to accomplish, all those things. And lastly, setting the bar, and by that I mean if you want to do youth empowerment, you want to set the bar really high. The standard or the expectations, good enough is not good enough. Setting the bar high for the students and high for yourself. And what we've found is the students are capable of getting to a very high level of skills, for example, and we regularly have adults in the state legislature comment that the presentation skills and the presentation and testimony of the students that have gone there was better than most of the adults that come before them. So that's the kind of thing you want to hear. And the way you set the bar is the same way the football coach or the soccer coach sets a high bar and expects a high standard for performance in the game. And it's the same idea of looking how the track coach looks to see how fast they can get kids to run. You want to see how strong you can develop those skills, how good the media can be, and so forth. And what you'll find is it can be really high. I'll turn it back over for a moment to the students from Youth to talk a little bit about meetings and meeting locations and that type of thing.
So a really important thing to keep in mind is where you're going to be meeting with the students, and also how are they going to be getting there.
So when you're thinking about where you're going to be meeting with the students, you really have to consider a couple of things. The first one is your room big enough to accommodate all the members of your group? This is really important because you really want to make sure that nobody in your group is left out. Also, you want to make sure that it's a private room so people aren't just walking in and out who aren't members of your group. Also, you really want to make sure that you're avoiding that classroom row style of seating. What we do in our group is we either sit in a circle or sit in a horseshoe style seating so that everyone can see each other, and so it's more of an open conversation with the group, not a teaching style group. And also you want to make sure that you have computer access so that you guys can do some research.
It's really important to make sure that you have a consistent time and place and day of the week that you are meeting. So, for example, like I said earlier, we are all in high school, so our meeting times are every single Monday from 5 to 7. And that makes it really easy for your advisors and your students and maybe the parents transporting, just everybody involved if you have that consistent meeting time.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vicki Hebert, and I am the coalition coordinator in the city of Dover. So I get to work with the adult coalition. And I just want to start by giving you a little bit of an overview of our coalition. So we were founded in 1992, and this is the exact same time that Youth to Youth was being founded. And we strategically decided that we wanted the adult coalition to be branded one way, and the youth coalition to be branded with their own identity a separate way. But really the two organizations work very closely together. The youth organization, Youth to Youth, is by far our most active member and partner. So over the last 25 years, we've completed 10 years under the Drug-Free Communities Grant Program. We completed one round of the Stop Act underage drinking program, and we just started yesterday our second round under that grant. And really, like a lot of other coalitions, DFC coalitions in particular, we work to increase that community collaboration and decrease youth substance abuse, with youth being by far the most active sector in our coalition. And there are a couple different ways that the youth work with us. The first is by supporting projects that the coalition is really taking the lead on. So for example, we host town hall meetings where the students might help with registration or promoting the event or help with childcare so that adults can attend the meeting. Another example is our drug take back events. And when we first started this, we collected, I think it was like 93 pounds of drugs, which we were happy with, but we decided that wasn't good enough for us. We thought that we could do more and we could do better. So I went to the students and I challenged them to come up with a creative way to promote the drug take back event, and this is what they came up with.
So now on the Wednesday before the drug take back day, we hold our zombie project. So the core message around our zombie project is, if you think zombies are scary, just take a look inside your medicine cabinet. So as a group, we all dress up like zombies and we have a great time marching around downtown Dover, and we even have a press conference, and we are oftentimes in the front page of the newspaper. And all of this, as I said before, is to promote Drug Take Back Day.
So the event was hugely successful, ended up on the front page of the newspaper 2 days before the Take Back event. And instead of collecting 90 pounds again, we ended up collecting over 300 pounds, which we really attribute to the students jumping in, getting the message out. And as you can probably tell, this is something that I would have a really hard time getting adult coalition members to dress up as zombies and take action like this. But it was the perfect thing for youth coalition members to do to get the message out there. So in addition to supporting projects, the students partner with us to support messages that the coalition develops. So we do a lot around using survey data, and a few years ago we created a social norming campaign highlighting that the majority of students aren't using these substances. So you can see the poster that the coalition developed, and we had some talking points and everything, and then really had the students help us disseminate that in the schools, really be spokespeople and advocates for the message. They created radio public service announcements, held activism events around that message, and really helped sort of leverage the message and get it out in the community. Another example is our brain campaign. So the coalition decided that we really wanted to move beyond just getting adults to stop providing alcohol to minors, but wanted them to understand why they shouldn't be providing alcohol to minors. So developed that campaign, having adults really understand the impact that alcohol has on that teen and underage brain. So again, I went to the students, asked them to come up with some creative ways to get this message out, and they developed a huge activism event that was on the front page of the newspaper. They had signs and posters and chants, and were downtown really helping get this message out. They also developed a sticker to go into stores and put on cases of beer. They developed radio ads. So again, you can see how they helped us leverage the message that the Adult Coalition developed and really help us saturate the community with the message. So these are some more pictures from different activities that they did.
And you can see the developing of the knowledge piece of that, where we actually had the students learn the different parts of the brain, so that the youth students, by the time we were ready to launch this, could talk about the prefrontal cortex and when the alcohol affects the prefrontal cortex, how that is different from how it affects the brainstem and other parts of the brain.
So beyond just sort of the examples that I've shared about the impact that the students have in partnering with the coalition, it really helps us with a lot of grant requirements as well. So with the Drug-Free Communities grant, engaging youth is one of the required sectors. That's a real easy check for us. When it comes to the match requirement, all of these students, their volunteer time is a tremendous match for us. And then we count all of the activities that they're doing that we're partnering on as outputs in our grant report through DFC-Me. So just real quickly, to show the value of their time, New Hampshire, it's almost $23 an hour that their time is worth. So just the next slide has some quick math. We have about 70 students in our program that meet 2 hours each week, and they're meeting probably about 40 weeks during the year. So that's over $128,000 of volunteer time that we're getting from them. So that's over 100% of our match for our DFC grant that we had. So hugely valuable there. In terms of reporting, and I'm going to go through this really quickly, but if anyone has a DFC grant and has questions about how to report some of these activities, please feel free to reach out to me. But I do want to point out a couple areas in the report where we're taking credit for a lot of the things that the youth are doing. So in terms of formal coalition meetings, we consider our youth empowerment teams as coalition meetings, and we can say that our youth are highly active in the coalition. They added a new section a few years ago asking if the youth meet separately and some of their activities, how frequently they're meeting. And then when it comes to the strategy activities, we are constantly putting their activities in there. So you can see the 7 strategies here, and I listed out some of the activities in the DFC report system where our students have engaged in different activities. So recognition programs, media campaigns, changing policies. Our students are engaged in all of these different types of activities.
So we're about ready to wrap up our webinar. A couple of quick things before we do so. One is we're going to go back onto the live camera in just a moment. My information's up there for contact purposes. And we're going to allow you to send in any chat-based questions here, and we can do that right now. But I'd like to have go back to the live camera and have the students introduce themselves. They might be wondering what age grade they're in and that type of thing, and have a couple of questions for them. So are we live? Okay. So we're back with you live in our studio here from downtown Dover, New Hampshire, and we have our 3 volunteers who did put on today's webinar. And if you guys would just introduce yourselves, name, rank, serial number. Go right ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Belle. I am 16. I'm a junior at Dover High School, and I've been in the program for 4 years now.
I'm Violet. I am 17. I'm a senior at Dover High, and this will be my 7th year.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm 16. I'm a junior at Dover High, and this will be my 6th year in Dover Youth.
And Violet, you're a senior in high school, been in the program for 7 years. Can you tell us what caused you to sign up in the first place, and then, and it might be a different thing that kept you engaged for 7 years from 6th grade right to senior in high school? Can you speak to that?
Okay, so when we're in 5th grade, we have DARE taught to us, and Mitch was actually my DARE instructor. So at the end of the year, he was going around like telling us about Youth, and then the whole time we were doing DARE, I was very interested, and the whole thing seemed like fun, but it was also just interesting in general. So I signed up to do the summer program the summer before my 6th grade year, and then the reason I stayed in it is because not only is it really fun, like we've been saying, but 2 really big things for me is, 1, I made a really big core group of friends in here where we all have one thing in common, and it's a very big thing in all of our lives, so that's one of them. And the second is that, and this one's a little bit bigger, is that I like coming to a place every single week where youth voice feels like the most important thing in the building, and where youth voice is important, so we can actually go out in the community and make all of these changes just with every single presentation or every single sticker shock that we go out and do.
Okay.
I joined because actually Hannah was in my 7th grade class, and she was like, hey, you know, you might really like this, and she dragged me into it, and I stuck around because I love the messages we send out, and it's just, as Violet said, a really good group of kids who are in this program that I love, and now they're all my best friends.
Okay, we have a question from online, and just so everybody knows, we will email the PowerPoint slides and a certificate of attendance tomorrow. If you have any further questions, please feel free to put them in on the chat, and we will make sure we ask.
Okay, so our next webinar is October 17th, and same time. We always do it on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's going to be on developing presentations and skills in youth advocates, and show you some particular techniques and skills in that. There's also going to be 2 additional free webinars that will take place. All these future webinars will be much more specific and topically oriented. In January, it will be having youth advocates work with the media and the press, and in February, the webinar will be on legislative and non-legislative policy change activities involving youth and youth advocates and those kinds of things. Do we have any follow-up questions coming in?
No, that is
okay.
it.
So not seeing any further questions. I'd like to thank everybody for being a part of it. Last time I checked, we had 71 communities signed up requesting to tune into that. That's a great turnout. We're glad to work with all of you and all of our friends out there. So glad to have you with us, and reach out to us anytime if we can help you out. Girls, you did a great job today in the presentation. Thank you much for putting in your time to help make this successful, and Vicki and Stephanie here at the controls, mission control, making all this go out correctly. So on behalf of everybody here at Dover Youth to Youth, have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.